For pretty much all of human history, we've thought of ourselves as, well, ourselves. Singular beings, totally in charge of our own thoughts and actions. But what if I told you that you're not just you? That you're actually a walking, talking ecosystem, home to trillions of tiny organisms that don't just live inside you, but might actually be pulling some of the strings? Today, we are diving into the absolutely wild, almost sci-fi connection between your gut and your brain.
The famous poet W.B. Yeats wrote this over a century ago. It's this beautiful philosophical question, right? Where do we end and our actions begin? How do you separate the two? And what's wild is that right now, science is asking a very similar question, just on a completely different scale, the microscopic one.
And this is where we jump from poetry straight into biology. When you look in the mirror, you see one person. But science tells a much, much bigger story. We are living in a constant partnership with trillions of bacteria, fungi, and viruses. And look, this isn't some kind of invasion. It's a deep, ancient partnership that we've evolved together over millions of years.
To really get our heads around this, there's a new word we need to know: holobionts. It's the scientific term for what we really are. Not just a human, but a composite organism, a kind of superorganism, where our human cells and all those microbial cells work together as one complete unit. It completely changes how you think about what an individual even is.
And just to give you an idea of the scale here, it is absolutely mind-blowing. If you look at all the genes in your body, the actual code that makes you, a whopping 99% of them, they're not a human at all. They're microbial. That means most of the genetic instructions inside you come from your tiny passengers.
Okay, so if these microbes have that much power, you've got to be asking, how do they do it? How in the world does a tiny bacterium hanging out in your gut get a message all the way up to your brain, the most complex thing we know of? Well, let's tap into the secret communication channels on this gut-brain hotline.
So this microbiota-gut-brain axis, it's not just some abstract idea. It's a real physical thing. It's a network. Signals are constantly traveling from your gut microbes through all sorts of pathways directly to your central nervous system. And this isn't just a weird human quirk. It's a super old system that we see all across the animal kingdom.
So how's this hotline actually work? Well, scientists have figured out there are 4 main ways these messages get through. Think of it like a communications network. First, microbes can literally tap into the vagus nerve. That's like a direct fiber optic cable to the brain. Second, they can send out chemical text messages that travel through your bloodstream. Third, they can whisper secrets to your immune cells, which then carry the message. And fourth, they can trigger special cells in your gut to release hormones, sending a signal out to the whole body.
Okay, let's zoom in on one of those channels, because it's a huge one, those chemical messages. So when your gut bacteria break down fiber, the stuff your body can't digest, they produce all these other chemicals, like short-chain fatty acids. And you shouldn't think of these as just waste products. Nope, they are powerful little messengers that can get into your bloodstream, travel all over, cross into the brain, and influence everything from inflammation to your mood.
So trying to figure all this out in humans, it's incredibly complicated. So scientists did something really clever. They turned to some, let's call them unlikely detectives, really simple organisms. By looking at worms, flies, and fish, we can start to piece together the basic rules of this ancient conversation. First up, we've got the tiny nematode worm C. elegans. What's great about this little guy is we know its entire nervous system, every single cell. And what studies show is that certain bacteria in its gut can produce a chemical that gets into the worm's system and directly changes how it behaves, making it avoid certain things. The bacteria are literally hijacking the worm's brain to get what they want. All right, next, let's move on to the fruit fly. Scientists found that flies without any microbes are kind of hyperactive, zipping around all over the place. But you give them back one specific bacterium, Lactobacillus brevis, and boom, they chill out. The bacteria are basically helping to manage the fly's energy budget. And other studies, they've shown that a fly's gut bacteria can even influence who a fly finds attractive. How crazy is that?
And last but not least in our trio of tiny detectives, the zebrafish. Now, the cool thing about zebrafish larvae is that they're transparent. You can literally watch their brains develop under a microscope in real time.
And what this has shown us is that the microbiome is absolutely essential for neurons to grow and connect properly in the parts of the brain that handle social stuff. It's like the microbes are coaching the brain's construction crew. Bottom line, you get the microbes wrong, and the brain's social circuits just don't get built correctly.
So, these simple creatures, they've given us some massive clues. They've shown us that this connection is real and powerful. Now that we know what to look for, we can climb up the evolutionary ladder and see how this all plays out in mammals, in systems that are a lot closer to our own.
And the absolute hero tool for this kind of research is the germ-free mouse. These mice are raised in a totally sterile bubble, so they have zero microbes. None. They're basically a clean slate, biologically speaking. And by comparing them to regular mice, we can start to figure out exactly what our microbiomes are doing for us.
And let me tell you, the differences are, well, they're huge. You see, mice without microbes have their brain development all scrambled up. Their neurons can't connect properly, there are different levels of inflammation, and behaviorally, they're more anxious, they respond to stress differently, and, this is a big one, they have problems with social behavior. It's becoming crystal clear. A healthy gut seems to be non-negotiable for a healthy brain.
So this connection to social behavior, right? That obviously got researchers thinking about neurodevelopmental conditions like autism spectrum disorder. The big question became, could what's happening in the gut actually be contributing to some of the behavioral symptoms we see in ASD? Let's see what the mouse models tell us.
And the evidence is pretty darn compelling. In several different mouse models of ASD, giving these mice a specific probiotic, Lactobacillus reuteri, actually reversed some of their social difficulties. And get this, if they cut the vagus nerve, the effect completely vanished. That's the smoking gun right there, proving the bacteria were using that nerve hotline to talk to the brain. We're even starting to find the exact chemical messages the bacteria are sending.
Okay, but this isn't just a story about brain development. The microbiome's reach seems to stretch across our entire lives, and now it's being heavily linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's. More and more, scientists are looking at the gut as a potential starting point for the whole disease. Check this out. In what was really a landmark study, scientists took gut bacteria from human patients with Parkinson's and put them into these germ-free mice. And what happened? The mice started to develop the motor problems, the very symptoms we associate with Parkinson's. It suggests that the microbiota itself isn't just a bystander. It can actually help drive the disease forward, maybe by pumping out chemicals that stir up inflammation in the brain. You guys, this is a total game changer for neuroscience. If microbes in our gut can influence our brains in health and in disease, it's cracking open a whole new frontier for how we could treat brain disorders. We are just at the very, very beginning of figuring out how to target the gut to help the brain.
This has even led to a brand new term you're going to be hearing a lot more: psychobiotics. Basically, these are specific beneficial bacteria, probiotics, that we might one day be able to take to support our mental health. The whole idea is to use these little organisms to help rebalance that gut-brain conversation and maybe ease the symptoms of things like anxiety, depression, or social disorders.
Right now, the research is really exploding in two main areas. Over and over again in all these different animals, we see the microbiome having its biggest and clearest effects on two things. First, social behavior, and second, our response to stress. If we can figure out exactly how these tiny microbes are tweaking these two fundamental systems, wow, the potential for new therapies is just immense.
So all of this brings us right back to where we began. We are these complex holobionts, these incredible collaborations between our human parts and our microbial parts. And the more we learn, the more we're faced with this really deep question. If these tiny organisms inside of us can shape how we feel, how we interact with others, even our basic behaviors, who's really in the driver's seat? It really does seem that knowing the dancer from the dance is a whole lot more complicated than we ever imagined.